Marion Mitchell Morrison was born on May 26, 1907 and passed away on June 11, 1979. Yes, John Wayne was actually a stage name. It does sound a lot more badass than Marion, I must admit. In 1939, Wayne's career was catapulted to fame in the John Ford picture Stagecoach, and would then proceed to star in 142 films, 83 of which were westerns. Good thing he wasn't typecast. One of these beloved westerns came on September 30th, 1948 under the title of Red River, a remake of 1935's Mutiny on the Bounty. John Wayne plays Thomas Dunson, who wants to start up his own successful cattle ranch in Texas. Along his journey he finds Groot, not that one, and Matthew Garth, played by Mickey Cunn, before skipping 14 years later, where Wayne hasn't aged whatsoever, and then played by Montgomery Clift, who looks like Dave Franco had sex with Tom Cruise. The role of Matthew Garth was originally offered to Burt Lancaster, who turned it down to star in The Killers. Montgomery Clift didn't even want to do the film in the first place. He was offered $60,000, but he showed very little interest until finally being talked into it by the director. He wasn't even entirely happy with the finished product either, slating the ending, I'll get to that, and wasn't even entirely happy with his own performance. The role of Thomas Dunson was originally offered to Gary Cooper, who turned it down, stating that the role didn't fit his image. After almost a decade and a half, Dunson and Garth, which sounds like a sequel to Wayne's World, now have a fully operational cattle ranch. The American Civil Wars disallowed their area the money to buy his beef, so they are forced to travel all the way to Missouri to find a good price. There are some subplots regarding the usual love interests, but the main focus is Dunson and Garth's relationship. During the saga, Dunson legally adopts him as his son, but it all starts to diminish until Garth and the rest of the crew cut ties with Dunson and head off on the journey without him. It all leads up to Dunson and Garth's showdown before... well, we'll get to that. The movie was actually shot in 1946, but put on the shelf and not released until 2 years later. This was due to another director, Howard Hughes, claiming it ripped off his movie The Outlaw. Because of this, many scenes were altered, redone, or cut out entirely to avoid copyright issues. The film also bears a similar resemblance to 1936's Come and Get It, so the question remains, was there anything original here? Allegedly, John Wayne and Montgomery Clift did not get along during filming and were always kept apart in between scenes. Clift was contacted later to star in Rio Bravo, but he turned it down as he refused to be reunited with John Wayne. Wayne himself claimed that Montgomery Clift was, and I quote, an arrogant little bastard. Well, do you know why it's called Red River? Because you'd rather drink menstrual blood than watch it again. I think the cinematography is brilliant and the landscape is shot very nicely. It was directed by Howard Hawks, which sounds like a goddamn superhero, and some of the shots are impressive for its time, and the stampede sequences really do look beautiful. The weather filters look really nice, and despite the concept of the plot, it doesn't really get boring at any stage, nor do I feel for a 2-hour plus film that it outstayed its welcome. The story itself isn't really my cup of tea, but it still didn't have me constantly checking my watch waiting for the credits. Some of the dialogue is well written, but it doesn't have enough else to hold up the entire picture for me. The main issue is the atrocious acting. Yes, I will go as far as to say atrocious. The fact that John Ford praised John Wayne's performance astounds me, and he's not the only one. Some of the online reviews also compliment his apparent incredible acting, some saying that it holds up the entire movie. Howard Hawks even stated he's a damn good actor. He does everything and he makes you believe it.
Dunson here says he's leaving the train.
Is that right, Dunson? Are you leaving?
I am.
You can't do that. You signed on. You agreed with
I signed nothing. If I had, I'd stay.
I don't like to see things go good or bad. I like them in between.
If you think I'm being harsh, John Wayne delivers every single line throughout the entire movie with this exact same manner, the exact same lack of effort or emotion. Every line, every facial expression, every body mannerism, all identical.
We're going to Missouri with 10,000 head. Take them to Missouri, Matt. Well, talk on your own time. Dan should be working. Well, there's water 3 or 4 miles on ahead. Dealer's right over there on that high ground. Well, there's no money and no work because there's no market for beef in the South. Dan was wearing checkered pants, wasn't he?
This movie, he is nothing more than a plank of wood.
I want to go on with you.
That won't do any good. Nothing you can say or do.
That, but please, I want to go with you.
The only time that he genuinely changes his expression is the scene where he gets a gunshot out of his hand. And even then, it's not believable. He fights to the death and he's still a blank sheet of paper. It really is cringy to watch. I want to believe that he half-assed this on purpose. I want to believe that maybe he just didn't like the script and just didn't give a shit. I want to believe he walked on set and had a dozen shots of whiskey before each scene. I refuse to believe that he put forth any effort in this movie. In fact, apparently, John Wayne didn't like Montgomery Clift's performance as he played it more subtly. He thought he underplayed the role, so he decided to compete by working harder at his performance. So apparently, he tried extra hard. This is why aliens won't visit us. When Garth gets rid of him, it's a saving grace as Wayne exits the film for a short time. It's a sigh of relief because he really is that bad. Montgomery Clift as Matthew Garth is fine. He has some bad delivery, but for the most part he's passable. Groot is alright, but it's a sad state of affair when the fucking cattle are the best actors in the film. Seriously, the supporting actors are only sometimes passable, but for the most part, it's just so cringeworthy, so bad, so wooden, carried by one of the worst performances I have ever seen in my entire life. I mean, here, they clearly look like they're reading cue cards.
Hired men don't run away.
You can't keep them this war out all the rest of the tribe.
No, but we can keep this war out until Cherry gets back. Then nobody will want to run away.
Right here, his face looks like the cross between some kind of troll and a fat kid whose parents wouldn't buy him a chocolate bar at the corner store. After watching this movie, I am left with so many unanswered questions. Like, how did this movie make it into the book, and yet it's still missing Green Mile, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Oliver, Good Will Hunting, Misery, The Truman Show, Harry Potter, Adaptation, Face Off, Bigger, Longer and Uncut, all of them. Oh no, they didn't make it, but this pile of shit did. God, even his fucking walk is boring. It's weird that in a film with very little effort on the side of acting, when they finally come to blows, Matt just oversells everything. It looks like a goddamn cartoon. The fight itself is actually quite cool, but guess what? It only lasts 87 seconds. 2 hours of build-up and the climax is 87 seconds long. A woman interrupts the fight and reminds them that they love each other. That's literally the ending. 2 hours of character and story development, then they fight for 87 seconds. A woman shows up. Oh, by the way, you love each other? Oh yeah, so we do. Besties for life. Credits! This is the absolute worst ending to a movie I have ever seen in my entire life, bar none. Seriously, there's no effort here whatsoever, and it is the biggest cop-out in movie history. Thing is, director Howard Hawks has acknowledged public criticism on the ending. Even fans of the film have slated it, but Hawks claims the problem isn't the ending, it's actress Joanne performance in the ending. Yeah, that was the problem. You may think I'm nitpicking by only bitching about the acting, but when every line of dialogue, some of which is actually quite well written, is delivered like a 3-year-old on heroin after being in the womb of a smoking pregnant woman who prostituted herself on a street corner in Mexico while sacrificing her cervix to a satanic cult, it's quite difficult to ignore. The love stories are so bad, I consider this a more forced and random love story than Edward Scissorhands. This woman meets Matt once, then talks to him again, and now they're in love. Yay! The movie was just doomed from the very beginning. During production, director Howard Hawks was hospitalised after he was stung by a centipede, Marion caught a severe case of man flu, and Joanne suffered from influenza. God was trying to warn all of you that this movie was going to be a bad idea. The movie's original budget was $500,000, but ended up costing almost double that. Well, that's no surprise. The amount of sedatives and alcoholic beverages that had to be on set to get through this shit probably cost a bomb. It's a shame because I'm sure the screenplay was actually very good and it was just ruined by the on-screen performances. The film that could have been so much more but is ruined by horrendous acting that makes the Wood Chipper Massacre look like the fucking Godfather, and the first on this list that I would severely recommend you steer well away from.